Hi, everyone. I'm really pleased to bring you this masterclass today because this is a topic that quietly sits underneath so many of the conversations we have with parents in the pregnant and popped village. When a baby arrives, everything shifts. Your routine change, your sleep changes, your priorities change, and often without realizing it, the dynamic between you and your partner changes too. Suddenly, you are not just a couple anymore. You are co-parents, decision makers, night shift partners, and logistics managers for a tiny human who depends on you for everything. And in the middle of all of that, it can be surprisingly easy for the relationship itself to slip quietly into the background. But the couple is actually the root of the family tree. When that foundation feels strong, connected, and understood, everything else in the family tends to feel steadier too. So in today's session, we are going to explore some of the small but powerful things that help couples stay connected during this huge life transition. Things like everyday moments of connection, communicating with kindness even when you are tired, choosing curiosity instead of assumptions, and understanding the different ways your partner feels loved and supported. To guide us through this conversation, I am really pleased to introduce today's speaker, Cornelia Dahinten, couples therapist and parent coach, and the founder of Conscious Connections Consultancy, who specializes in helping couples navigate the relationship shifts that come with becoming parents. Because love does not disappear after a baby arrives, it simply needs to be communicated in ways that work inside a very different season of life. So whether you are expecting your first baby, adjusting to life with a newborn, or already navigating the early years of parenting, this conversation is really about protecting the connection that sits at the heart of your family. Hi, I'm your host. I'm a postpartum and infant care doula, village building expert, mum, and the founder of Pregnant and Popped. I will be saying all of the important boring stuff before we begin, and then I'll be handing over to our special guest today. Then I'll jump back in towards the end to moderate the Q&A session later. The legal stuff. The educational content of our masterclasses is the work of our Pregnant and Popped providers. Pregnant and Popped itself is not licensed medical or legal professionals, and this is neither a medical nor legal platform. The content of today should not be considered medical or legal advice. Instead, it is always best to consult with your specialist providers for any specific concerns or questions, and use the information from today as a complementary tool to help guide those discussions and care plans. And now I would love to introduce our speaker for today. Joining us is Cornelia Dahinten, the founder of Conscious Connections Consultancy, where she works as a couples therapist, parent coach, and clinical hypnotherapist, supporting individuals, couples, and families here in Singapore and internationally. Cornelia's work is deeply relationship and attachment focused. She helps people understand the emotional patterns that shape how we connect with each other and how those patterns can influence connection, communication, conflict, trust, and intimacy within a relationship. Many of the couples she works with are navigating exactly the kind of transition we are talking about today. The shift into parenthood, the pressures that come with raising a family, and the challenge of staying connected while life becomes busier and more complex. She supports couples from many different backgrounds, including cross-cultural and international families, and her work often blends relationship therapy with practical parenting guidance, helping couples build stronger communication, emotional safety, and a deeper understanding of each other. Alongside her work with couples, Cornelia also runs conscious parenting programs and workshops where she combines psychology, brain development, and practical tools to help families create calmer, more connected dynamics at home. What I particularly appreciate about Cornelia's approach is that it is not just about theory. It is about helping people uncover what is happening beneath the surface in their relationships and then giving them practical ways to move forward with more awareness, compassion, and connection. So I'm really pleased that she is here with us today to guide this conversation about how couples can stay connected as they move into the season of life that comes with becoming parents. Cornelia, thank you so much for joining us. I will hand over to you now.
Thank you so much for having me and having the opportunity to talk about us after building a family, after having a baby, after becoming a parent. which is a topic that's very close to my heart. So just a little bit about me. This is my family. My kids are never really happy if I post them, but I was allowed to show a picture of them in a masterclass. Because I think it's important to understand that I've been there. I've been going through these situations that I'm going to talk about. I can relate to it, and I feel that that's very important in all the work that I do, because really this has been the biggest teacher in my life, my three children, and the relationship that I had to maneuver. So I'm a couples therapist, very much as Katie was saying, very much focusing on the developmental, the kind of attachment. How do we form attachments? Why do we behave a certain way, and so on? But I'm also the clinical hypnotherapist and trained in really very many different modalities that I combine to help people through situations in a multifaceted way and not just focusing on one certain thing. As was said in the introduction, really, I think it is one of the most important things for us to understand that when a baby is born, a family is born. So thanks to AI, I got this family tree that I've been looking for ages, because I really want people to understand that the roots of the tree really are the individual selves, the parents. And then we form this stem together that then can grow into branches. So we need to nurture ourselves and the couple. And it's so easy in the whole phase of infancy and maybe having trouble with a lot of adjustments and maybe digesting things that were difficult, to know and remember that we are important as a couple, because there's no time and maybe no energy and maybe no ability to focus on that. So today I really want to talk about how can we meaningfully take ourselves and the couple into consideration in a way that is actually doable. Because when a baby is born, it's not just the baby that's born. There is a mother that is born, there's a father that is born, and there's a whole family system that is born. And we need to consider that when we actually think about the well-being of the children as well, because they will be affected. Sorry, my voice is a bit crikey today. They will be affected by the well-being of the individual and the well-being of the bond. It will always affect children, because also we are forming their ideas about how are we treating ourselves. How is someone treating oneself? How is a wife treated? How is a husband treated? How does a wife behave? How does a husband behave? We are forming all of these very deeply grounded concepts in the experience of a child. So it is not only important what we do to the child, it is also important what we do for us. So because everyone in that bond, the individuals, is also forming a new identity. Of course, baby's starting to form a bit of an identity, and that takes until they're 27. But the identity building of the mother, the identity building of the father, and the identity and culture building of the bond and the family is hugely important. And it really pays off when we think about that a little bit, when we pay some time, when we invest some time to really formulate what is it that we want to grow into? What do we want it to look like? What do we want to create as a vision? Rather than just running through it in a bit of a blind way, following inner programs, responding to expectations, and so on. So really, and if you haven't given birth yet, it's the most amazing time to think through these questions. What kind of family do we want to be? What is important for me when I'm a mother? And your opinion about that may change after the baby is born, but you start thinking into this direction of active creation and vision building, which will make it easier later on. So what actually changes after a baby is born? So I was speaking about identity already, but there are some really daily life things that absolutely change. So most parents, not all, but 99.9%, I guess, start to have a lack of sleep. which affects your mood, your well-being, your nervous system, regulation skills, and so on. As I said, there is an identity shift. Then we usually don't have that much time anymore because all of the time that used to be for us now is usually there to provide for the needs of the baby. A lot of families don't have a lot of support. Some families have support, and that may come with its own challenges. Maybe you have been quite separate from your families before, and suddenly you having a baby, you have a lot of expectations or people who start to have opinions about what you do. We usually have less spontaneous connection and touch within the relationship. A lot of women, especially when they breastfeed, start to feel really touched out and find it hard to be available physically to their partners. And husbands very often struggle with that. Suddenly, there is a role imbalance because many of the things that have to do with baby can only be done by mom because she's the one who's breastfeeding and so on. So there is a reshuffling of who is doing what, who do I want to be, how can I care for myself, how much time do I have available, and how are we actually connecting to each other? In what way? Because the ways that were available before often are not available anymore because of time pressure, physical state, or an imbalance of work, right? There's also an energy problem because our capacities will be really stretched, and that is true for both. So fathers actually more often than we think suffer from postnatal depression. They suffer from the change in the role that they have for their wife. Very often they find it very hard to understand what is the role that they should take over. And I see many fathers who really struggle finding meaning in this role and finding how they can actually add and be a benefit to the system. Not only women have birth trauma, also sometimes husbands have birth trauma by experiencing a very traumatic birth, by being maybe in situations in which they have to worry about their wife's life or the life of the baby. So very often that isn't talked about enough and affects the capacity, the emotional capacity, the mental and physical capacity of being available. And then, of course, mothers have a huge physical shift. They may suffer from postnatal depression, may not know the science. They may not know how to react when they feel very overwhelmed. They may have birth trauma and do not know how to process that. Their bodies are healing. Some women have intensive wounding during birth. Some women don't have it at all. So, depending on what the individual and the couple is going through, the capacity of actually being available, being able to care for the other one, because for being able to do that, I need to have that space in my mental capacity is sometimes really very, very stretched. So we want to look into how are we communicating that? How are we holding space for all of these things? And there are amazing practitioners in the village, actually, that will be there to support you. There are psychologists, there are people like me, hypnotherapists, couples counselors, doulas, breastfeeding consultants. And I think it's really about understanding that using all of this support is something that is a very human experience. We want to bring back what the human experience should be like to parent in a tribe where there are people who know what they're doing, they support you, and they give that scaffolding to go through this experience not alone. And I really urge you, go and seek out for help because many of these things are almost impossible to do by yourself, like birth trauma release and working and going through postnatal depression and all of these things that come up. So really, when I look at the couples that I work with, the problem isn't that love is decreasing. Conflict really increases, and sometimes conflict looks as a kind of a a silencing of communication, right? Conflict doesn't have to be loud. Conflict can be very silent. It's a separating, like kind of a distance that is created. And distance or more louder conflict is not created because love is decreasing. It's actually because we decrease the ability to regulate ourselves, to be able to feel through and be able to have capacity for the other one. So it is the regulation skills that we want to focus on. We don't need to talk about how much love can we get increase. We don't need to talk about only communication. We need to talk about how can we regulate our nervous systems so that there is ability to actually even think about the other one. Now, dysregulated nervous systems basically create that we find it very hard to communicate in a safe way because we start to focus on our own pain, on our own overwhelm. It's a little bit like we're creating this echo chamber inside of ourselves where it's impossible to look outside because you're so overwhelmed that only that becomes important. It's a survival strategy, basically, because what happens is we go into our stress systems. So the nervous system is either relaxed or stressed. Stressed over a longer time or a shorter time. When we are stressed for a long time and we're constantly in these survival strategies, we become very self-destructive. Self-destructive in a way because we're constantly maybe in fight, which looks like an attack, or in flight, which looks like defense, or in freeze, which is like a not really doing anything, not defending, not attacking. So when we are in these survival strategies, our nervous system is in the stress mode. And to be able to really work with things of like improving the couple, working on the identity, working on building the family that we dream of, being the parents that we want to be, we need to understand how to get out of the survival strategies. So today, I will really focus on teaching you how can you, as a couple, build a strong bond and have a strong commitment to actually helping each other, building a safe place in which you can self-regulate and get out of your survival strategies and help each other to feel safe again and connect. So the kind of the biggest power to protect your bond comes from this self-regulation space. So where is the biggest power you hold when you are in conflict? That is, or when you have an emotion, or when you feel out of sorts, is the pause that you create before you are reacting. Because what happens is we feel a certain way, we may be overwhelmed, we may be tired, we may be touched out, we may be angry, we may be jealous, whatever the feeling is. And then we act on the feeling. We are reacting rather than sharing the feeling. So the pause, when we realize, oh, I'm feeling really something very strongly, the pause before reacting to that is there to actually change something in that behavior, to not bottle it up, to share the emotion rather than acting on the emotion. So it's about proactively seeking conversation, to listen, to understand, and learn about what the other one is going through, to share my emotion, sharing what I'm going through, to help the other one to understand me on a deeper level, to help myself to understand myself on a deeper level. For that, we need to have an agreement. Can we both do that? Can we both try to pause before reacting? Can we both help each other to see that we may be acting on an emotion rather than sharing the emotion? By listening to understand, by asking, okay, I can see you're feeling this way. Can you help me understand? By giving generosity and care for the other, even though we may not feel like it. Now, to be able to do that, we need to have a setup in which we have certain agreements. So the agreement really that I feel help the most is, please let's pause when we feel intensely. Let's be proactively seeking conversation so we don't need to bottle it up. And let's really try to listen to understand what is the emotion that is driving that feeling. What is it that you need? How can I support you? If we wait until we don't want to be generous anymore, then we start to really pile up the hurt. And when then years later we believe we need couples therapy, there's a lot to work through. So really, it is actually quite a good idea to get support before we get to a situation in which we feel this relationship is not working anymore, and get help with putting these things into place. When we are new parents, we don't have time. We don't have mind space. We don't have capacity, as I just said, right? So we need to use micro moments and glitter them through the day, through your life. Don't only go for big dates, big actions, big gestures. It's the tiny moments that actually make a big difference. Connection is built in 30 seconds. So it's the little things, the smile, the actually looking at someone when we're going through a room, a little hug that lasts a little longer than usual, the reaching out to the hand of the other and giving it a little squeeze. The generous act of doing things like when you make yourself a cup of tea, to also ask the other one if they want one. When you see your partner suffering, to ask, hey, what's going on for you? How are you really? And asking questions or thinking about, what is my partner craving the most? So it's about being open to asking those questions and beforehand agreeing that that's what you're going to do with each other. Because what I see a lot in couples therapy is that people are almost scared to ask that. They're scared to reach out their hand. They're scared to be generous because they had the experience that it is not reciprocated. And when you are paying something into the relationship and it's not reciprocated, you become scared that you are the one giving all of the energy and you're not getting any energy back. To prevent that, this little contracting, actually talking through, what is it that you are craving? How can I support you? How are you really? What are the things that you want from me? And then agreeing that you would want to support each other on that before your relationship is in jeopardy. That is the highest chance of success. Understanding that it's the little things that we invest every day, every second when we meet each other, that we invest that or openly ask to receive something. Now, this sounds easy when I say it this way, but I know from experience that it's not easy for people to do that all the time, because we all bring wounds from our childhood. There may be a wound that tells you you are not lovable. There may be a wound that you think, or a program and a role modeling where you believe you're not allowed to ask for something that you need. Or you may feel like you should always just support the other, no questions asked. These are the blocks, the little trips on the way that it would be quite amazing to realize. So when you realize that, that's an amazing moment to come and see a couples therapist. How are we dealing with this feeling? How can we actually dive a little deeper so that the dynamic doesn't go off, but that we can actually really still flow with each other? Because really relationships are like a dance. It's like you are dancing to a certain rhythm, something happens and it's like, oops, you get out of your rhythm and you need to find a new rhythm, because every time something like that happens, like a baby and another baby, or a different some difficulty in the outside world, your dance rhythm will be shaken up a little bit and it needs a little twist probably. So contracting, commitment, accountability to actually doing what helps each other, and to agree that you might need outside help before you are in really big trouble. They're pillars of staying connected. They're things that actually really, really work. They've been tested, they've been tried, and people like different things. So you can try out some of those, like the 6-second hug. Eye contact before you talk about logistics. Communicating what you notice the other one doing well, not just what you're annoyed about. Asking, how can I support you? What do you want me to understand about how you feel or what's going on for you right now? Are questions that really help to create generosity in a relationship. So what we want to do with all of these things is really about leaning into the bond rather than trying to protect yourself from the bond. And when you feel yourself leaning out, it's about understanding or thinking for yourself, what is it that I'm trying to avoid? What is it that I'm scared of? What do I not want here? And then exploring that a little bit more to, again, install the ability to lean into and actually give each other what we need. And that's true for any phase in life, but the baby change is just a huge one because it's the first time that the couple goes into this pressure pod of not really just being two individuals anymore that can easily comply with each other, right? It's very easy to agree with your partner if there's no other expectations. If you're not a parent and want something totally different, suddenly becomes so important that your opinion is put into practice, because that's really what happens. Suddenly things that did not used to be very important now have a very different weight. And it's often unexpected. People don't expect that to happen. But starting to build a family is a very different ballgame to just being two individuals living and doing their lives together. Another big, big, big influence that you have, a big power that you hold, is to shift from assumptions into curiosity. So I often hear people saying, and I guess I've been there sometimes before myself, thinking he doesn't care. He doesn't really appreciate me. He thinks I'm whatever. He doesn't want to do this. So we're working on assumptions and then basing our actions, feelings, responses, and so on the assumptions, rather than going into inquiry. Now, the problem with the assumptions is they have to do with our own life. They have to do with things that we experience in our lives and nothing with your partner. So inquiry looks very different. Pause your defense. Rather than assuming, ask, can you tell me more about that? And then just mirror back what you heard to make sure that you actually heard the right thing. Because also the way we interpret what we hear is heavily based on our assumptions. So true inquiry is really about, for yourself, taking a step back and saying, let me understand this before I assume I know, before I can react, before I try to fix and so on. So the inquiry, moving from assumptions to curiosity, is really incredibly important to move your relationship into intimacy and staying in intimacy as well. And again, as I said earlier, we don't have time when we just had a baby. So we have to be more efficient rather than very intense. We have to take the small moments and make them really matter. So if we have 10 minutes after the baby fell asleep as a little ritual, maybe, that goes a long way. It makes a huge difference. Can we maybe schedule in weekly states of us conversations, like where we share what did I like, what filled my heart. Don't always be negative focus. Really try to pay attention into building what you want. Send your energy to how you want your relationship to be. Create spaces in which logistics and kids are a total taboo topic because you do not want to reduce your relationship to logistics and kids. In the beginning, while all of this is still fresh, that's relatively easy to do because you still have things that you thrive on. Later on, if you did go down the logistics and kids topics only avenue, it is a bit harder to recreate it, but it's still possible. For example, by reading an article before you go on the date and share what you read. Or by coming up with a topic, buying conversation cards. They're beautiful cards by the School of Life, for example, if anybody knows it, has a beautiful set of cards, which is called Connect, and you just take a card, take it on the date, and talk about this topic. But if you haven't gone down that route yet, it is really worth protecting the bond that you have that is outside of logistics and kids, because it's probably one of the biggest topics I hear of parents who have teenagers that they don't have anything to talk about anymore. They just talk about logistics and kids and maybe some other family stuff. And then what bonded you before the intimacy is lost. Dividing invisible labor in a conscious and fair way creates very efficiently a better atmosphere in the household. So there's one way of being aware that things are fair and then how we divide this and making it a conscious discussion. But there's also the part where you really want to inquire, where do I come from? What is my understanding of fear? What is the role that I want to have? If I didn't think about this at all, what was the gender role that I got communicated as a child? Because really, what we experienced as children is what your subconscious expectation is going to be. If you want to change it at all, you need to make it an extremely conscious process. And I had that experience myself. I always thought I was this feminist and super modern and all of that until I realized some of my habits that I copied from my mother and expectations that I thought were normal in my subconscious program were extremely old-fashioned and conservative and had to really go through quite a hard process to uncover it all. So making this a conscious process, and you will probably have to go back to it and revisit it and revisit it again and again, is actually a very good investment in terms of having a load shared and making your connection more efficient, because when you see the suffering of your partner, that creates a lot of intimacy. And when your partner sees your suffering, that also creates a lot of intimacy and emotional safety. And the dividing of the invisible labor very much feels like a caring for each other. Okay, so let's just come to the very practical things to have a very practical vision. If you don't know where to start, these are really good starting points. So just now while you're seeing this, take a piece of paper, take a pen, and just try to respond to it in a very intuitive way. So what is one thing I want my partner to know about how I feel right now? And just note it down. What is one thing that I would like to understand about my partner? What would I like to know about that person that I'm co-creating this family with? And what is one conversation that I have been avoiding because maybe it makes me feel scared? Maybe I don't know how to raise it. One topic that I find hard to talk, think, or feel about. And what would be one active habit I would like my partner to start, to support, to feel closer, to feel safer, whatever that may be. Now, some of the concepts I spoke about may sound a bit big and maybe overwhelming, but if you start with these 4 things, you're having a really good starting point. And if you then go into contracting with each other, what is it that we want to create? Now, one of the imbalances that I see a lot is that we have women who are organizing the entire family and husbands who don't know how to find their space in there and often just turn into the provider, which is a very conservative role that many, many couples slip into. And then the woman feels like she has no co-creating partner. Or it may be the other way around. The husband feels like he doesn't have a co-creating partner. So then it's really about sitting down and thinking, what can we do, even in the small moments of life, to create together? What can we do? And you can start with very small things like, I don't know, setting a table, baking a cake, where you kind of try to burst the normal dynamic that you have and try to do things the other way around just to see what that feels like. So if you're in a relationship where the woman is always taking the lead and the husband brings in the money, well, let's take the example of a cake. How about this time you do it exactly the other way around? Maybe the woman goes shopping, brings it all there, and then the husband is the lead in how to do the cake. And then how are you going to do that? What does that feel like? So it's kind of trying to take the whole dynamic that you have, put it into something very tangible, and then have a look at what that feels like if we change it. And we can take it from there. Okay, so that is it from me. You can reach me through WhatsApp or my website or an email, although email is not the best idea with me. The best idea is WhatsApp because sometimes I'm a bit overwhelmed by the emails that I get. You can follow me on Instagram where I try to share in little snits and bits and bobs so that you can tangibly actually become aware of things or take a little bit of a nugget away that can help you with certain things. If you like this masterclass, you can also leave a Google review for me if you want that. And I would love to hear if you have specific questions that I can support you with to make this a more individual experience.
Thank you so much, Cornelia. That was such a practical guide. I absolutely loved it. Just, yeah, tidbits that people can, literally take home and start doing today. You made me smile at a couple of bits. The making a cup of tea thing really, really struck a chord with me. It took me a while to realize myself that I suddenly realized my husband had been making me coffee without fail every single morning. And if he was going, and he still does, if he goes on a business trip, he makes cold brew and he'll put like 3 days worth of coffee in the fridge for me.
Oh,
And
lovely.
yeah, and I suddenly realized it was his way of saying, I love you, like, and so
Yeah.
I laugh now because and it's very rare that there isn't a coffee in the fridge or something if he's traveling, but like literally he'll get a message from me and it's like, do we have a problem we need to talk about? And he's like, why? I'm on a flight. And I'm like, there's no coffee in the fridge. Like, did I do something wrong? And he's like, no, I literally just forgot. I'm sorry. I still love you.
I
Oh.
love that exchange. It's a beautiful story. Yeah.
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 But it took me a while in the mix of it. I mean, this started, when our little one was a baby, but it took me a long while before I actually sort of like, ah, that's actually how his little way in this whole, this whole new life that we've got where we're crossing paths, trying to
Yeah.
pick up the balls, juggle the balls together. That was his one little constant way. And yeah, it took me a while before I realized and before I acknowledged it to him. And he likes now that I acknowledge it. It's a
Yeah, of course he does. It's
nice
an effort, isn't
easy
it?
tick box for him. Yeah.
Yes. So, and this is a beautiful story because what it also highlights is like kind of the way you're sharing that. I can hear your excitement. Can hear the love that you feel, right? So when we look for the signs of love and we find them, they're very nurturing. It's really about focusing on what is it that we want and look for the things the other one is already doing well. And then we can feel that love a
Yes.
lot more.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess there's so many other little things that people can probably look for in their little daily lives that someone might be doing that is just that little bit more than habit, if you know what I mean. Something like,
Yeah,
that they are genuinely doing for you more than just kind of running, on
yeah,
the daily treadmill,
yeah.
as it were.
There's this one other thing that had a massive impact on me. So my husband had this really stupid habit of leaving his socks in a cross in the living room every evening. And I used to be so
Oh,
annoyed about that.
oh well, that's just triggered me already. Like,
Yeah, and then I read
I feel I need to know why. Why would someone do that?
just he took them off and left them there. And then I read this on Facebook, really honestly, years ago. I read this letter that a husband wrote about his deceased wife. And he was saying that it's the little things that you actually miss. It's not the grand gestures, it's the little signs of presence in your day. And he said, and if he, and then he was mentioning something he was annoyed about, like equivalent to my sock issue. And he said, if I could only see those socks lying in the living
Oh,
room again.
oh, don't. You're gonna get me going.
Yeah. No, but honestly, that had such a, this this letter had such
Yeah,
an impact on my life. And I really think formed a lot of how I actually work with couples as well, because it's exactly that. So every time I see the socks now, I literally say, thank you, God, for having this man in my life.
that's so nice.
And it really changes the way you experience the moment. So you have so much power, you hold so much power in the experience that you have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was something I wanted to ask when quite early in what you were talking about today, you said about pausing before reacting, and but then also about kind of not just letting it go, not bottling it up.
Yeah.
Where, what do you do about that risk of pausing, but then not getting to the issue? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
how,
yeah. Definitely know
like,
what you mean.
yeah, because I
So
feel like,
pausing doesn't mean forgetting or leaving. Pausing means I take away my focus from my partner and I put the focus on me, understanding what I'm going through, maybe taking a breath, going through it until I go over the zenith of the emotion that's driving me. That might be anger, frustration, jealousy, whatever, right? And I wait until I'm more collected again, where I can speak and share from a regulated space. So maybe I need
okay,
to go for a quick walk. But in that pause, what needs to happen is self-regulation, not avoidance or what's the word, distraction, right? So making a commitment to actually get back to it is quite important. So pause doesn't mean forget. Pause means self-regulation and then looking for the conversation in a more collected, regulated way. Because when we are deep in an emotion, we're actually acting from the lower parts of the brain and we lose access to the part of the brain that is rational, where all the problem-solving skills come from. When you flip your lid, there's no positive thing that will come from this conversation.
really? Even if I'm perimenopausal, surely I'm allowed to flip my lid a little bit.
You can, but you have to deal with the consequences after. You could say, I'm just perimenopausal. Could I just rant at you? Would that be okay? And then you go,
Actually, that happens.
yeah,
That happens. I put a big label over it and go,
yeah,
right, this is coming from my perimenopausal
yeah.
part of my brain right now.
I just
Um,
want to rant.
yeah. Fair enough.
You could
So
do a
that's allowed.
boxing class as well instead.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So, um, so where do people typically speak to you? Is it online? Is it in a physical space? Like, what do you normally like to see people face to face?
Yeah, so both. I work globally, really. I work from the US to New Zealand. I have clients all over the world and I work online, but I love seeing people in person. So this is my clinic room in Bukit and I have another clinic room in Raffles Place. I work from the Osteopathic Center, who is also part of the village, and they're amazing guys. So it's always good to also come there. So I'm there on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the other days I'm here. And online, you can always see me. So you can find me through my link tree in Instagram, through my website, or you can just WhatsApp me and then we see what works best. When I work with couples, I love working with constructive dialogue. It's a very hands-on tool, and often people love learning that just as a prevention to stay in a sweet spot, to have the tools to talk through topics. And it's really a very hands-on tool where you learn how to mirror and stay in a conversation and feel really heard, and also how to kind of explore your emotions a little bit deeper. Many people find it very hard to come out of the reactive side, of the reactive surface, and really look into why am I reacting like that? And often feel bad afterwards. There's an eruption and they feel like, I don't know, I couldn't stop it. I don't know why I did that.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if this is part of the service, but I was just suddenly thinking like you must find a lot of the time it is the woman, the wife, the mother that starts this conversation or wants to start this conversation. They might even be watching this. They might then take the step of reaching out, finding out some more details about the next step. Do you have any guidance or advice on how they then get the buy-in from their partner to join this journey with them?
Yeah. So I always feel if the partner, first of all, I feel it's important to understand that in a marriage or in a partnership, we sit in the same boat. If one has a problem, the other one automatically also has that problem because they have an unhappy partner, right? So sometimes men are scared that they will end up in a room where two women then have a go at him. And they don't want to be in that situation, right? So
Yeah.
so I offer free of charge discovery calls. They can just give me a call either together or separately to feel into whether I'm a good match. I tend to do quite well with male clients because I'm quite scientific and I'm not about who's to blame or not. I'm really just looking for dynamics and how can we make this couple dance in the same tune again. My opinion is not interesting in the whole topic, right? And I think they feel that very quickly and they feel quite good. So that's a way to deal with it as a woman. If you feel your husband doesn't want to come, just say, have this free of charge call, have this chat, and just see whether it clicks with you or not. And they realize pretty quickly that they won't end up in a room where two women gang up on them.
Can see how some husbands
Yeah.
might be
And they
might be
don't want to
thinking
be
that.
blamed, right? They don't,
Yeah.
they're scared that their opinion or that their position would not be seen or that they were told that they're wrong or that they should behave in a different way or whatever. That's a worry. And I can understand that worry.
But
Yeah.
again, and I think we've spoken about this a lot before. Like, obviously, a lot of people reach out once they know they're in a state where they need help. But how amazing would it be if someone was able to, if someone had the foresight to reach out, to recognize what is currently working really well for them? They're in a good place, they're happy with each other, nothing big is jumping out of them, to be able to kind of distill and understand what is working well for them now, so that when they suddenly dip down and realize things aren't so great, they almost have like a checklist of things to come
Yeah.
back on, like, are we still doing this? Are we still doing that? Oh, actually, no, I haven't been doing that lately. Or, I haven't been appreciating
Yeah.
you and saying thank you for that thing that you do. So they can bring themselves back to this, to the center together.
Yeah. I think, first of all, to come to your question, I mean, perfect is when you learn how to do a relationship in before you're actually in trouble, right? So how do we communicate? What are the things to look out for? What might be my attachment style? What's my love language? Just learning how do you relate to other people? One thing. Second thing, the expectation that your relationship or marriage will not go through a difficult time is just a wrong expectation. We all come through our childhoods with some sort of wounds. There will be some things that we haven't really properly digested or processed that we don't understand, and in relationships, in deep relationships, the shadow will come out. It is not a sign that this relationship doesn't or shouldn't exist. It's a sign we're now at a spot where we can both grow from this. And taking this opportunity to actually say, take it as a gift. We are able to grow as people and mature into more mature humans, and taking that when we feel it first, rather than waiting years and years and years of hurting each other, which makes it more complicated because we start to not feel safe with each other anymore. We start to not want to be nice to the other one anymore, right? And when you're at that point, it's not impossible, but it just becomes a bit more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, I totally hear you with that. We have a question from our audience. I'll read it out for you. What typically goes on in a therapy session? Do we, the client, just talk and pour our hearts out? Do you ask questions and we just answer?
Yeah, no, not at all, not in my sessions, because I work a little bit differently. As I said, I work very practically. As you may have seen in today's masterclass, I try to really teach you skills, and I want to see the dynamic. So I usually teach people constructive dialogue if they're in a place that's okay. They're very escalated. We go about it a little bit differently. But if in a normal conflict situation, I teach constructive dialogue, and I see how people communicate and is the dynamics between them, and what are the topics that come up. And I get a very quick insight into what's really going on. And it doesn't take long to understand that. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, but usually all the dynamic is visible in every single conversation, even if you have an argument about a glass of water on the table, right? You can see that. And then we explore that and we see, okay, what helps this relationship? What drains this relationship? How can we nurture it? And where do we need to understand a little bit more? And then we just take it from there.
I bet you can see so much sometimes from body language just as soon as people walk through the door,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
where do they sit? Who sits what side?
Mm.
Who does what? Does one person get up and get one glass of water, or do they get up and get both of them a glass of water? Like,
And I actually do work with that a lot, and that's called embodiment. I work a lot with actually feeling the body and seeing how do we feel and what do we express with the body and what happens if we shift that, right? So if someone sits like this, right, and I see it, I say like, kind of try to follow that movement. How do you feel there? And now do the opposite. And how does that feel? So it's about mastering how you feel through your body, through your breath, through communication techniques, and really understanding a bit more, and then investing that to build what you want rather than constantly just hurting in what you have created in the past, changing the creation process. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, really powerful stuff. Really, really powerful. I imagine when people are in that, to just break those cycles, or to be uh to have those cycles seen, things that you didn't
Yeah.
even see in yourself, to have them
Yeah.
seen, and then
Yeah. No
yeah,
subconscious. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for today, Cornelia. Such a
Thanks for having me.
powerful masterclass. Just such practical tidbits that we can take away, try today, see how it sits, I think that's what I'd like to say to everyone today. Have a look through some of those practical tips, especially where Cornelia suggested we ask ourselves those questions. We maybe take a little note down of the answers and just sit in that maybe for a moment, see how that feels, see what that raises in you. If you feel you can take that step forward with your partner yourself, amazing. If not, you know how to contact Cornelia now, individually or together to see how you can kind of start working through this.
One more thing, I just want to add one more thing. If you are with a partner who doesn't want to do couples therapy, you can still work on your relationship alone because a dynamic shifts when one person changes as well. So you can start even though you don't have a buy-in. I have seen huge shifts happening, even if people just work on their own.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. Oh, well, on that note, that's basically everyone has got an action item to do today then. So you all need to go away and go back through the slides. And I'm wishing everyone a good day. Thank you again
Thank
to
you.
Cornelia for her time, for everyone watching this live and on the recording. Thank you so much for your time and your trust. And we're just so pleased that you're part of the Pregnant and Pop Village.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love being a part of that.
Absolutely love having you. Thank you, Cornelia. If you're looking for more support on your pregnancy, postpartum, or parenting journey in Singapore, make sure you check out our website, pregnantandpopped.com. And if you want personalised, empathetic, professional guidance, join the Pregnant and Popped Village, because you shouldn't have to Google mother.